I mean, crypto has been seen in a negative light by governments for the last decade. It's been fighting uphill, and it's not just gotten to neutral. It's gotten to overtly positive. You mentioned, of course, the Trump takeover has its own crypto czar. And in Canada, as you mentioned, the leading candidate is overtly pro-Bitcoin. Canada was like the anti-Bitcoin a few years ago. You remember the trucker protests and all of that. And now to see a potential prime minister who is pro-Bitcoin, I think people have dramatically underestimated the scale of this. I would also add, there's this question of whether we'll see governments around the world starting to add Bitcoin to their own balance sheets. I would say that that possibility is not priced into the market at all, like zero. If that becomes a reality, I think you're talking about Bitcoin being many hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Matt Hougan, a prominent figure in the cryptocurrency and exchange-traded fund (ETF) industry, is causing controversy with his audacious predictions regarding the future of Bitcoin. The pivotal role that institutional adoption plays in the crypto sector is among his most remarkable observations. By 2025, Hougan predicts a significant change in the market, with institutional investors controlling the majority of Bitcoin ETFs and generating previously unheard-of capital inflows that surpass the $40 billion mark set in 2024. He also draws attention to the undervalued possibility of governments incorporating Bitcoin into their balance sheets, which may revolutionize the market and drive its price into the hundreds of thousands. Hougan thinks that Bitcoin is poised for exponential growth due to its limited supply and rising demand worldwide. For more in-depth analysis and updates, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enable post notifications if you have a strong interest in cryptocurrencies and the changing environment of digital assets. Thank you for watching and enjoy the video.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the important thing to note, you said broke every record. It shattered them, as you mentioned. It's not even close. It's orders of magnitude bigger. You take the best performing financial asset of all time, which is Bitcoin, and you take a 10-year delay for demand to build up and a huge audience of people who don't feel comfortable buying Bitcoin any other way, and you put them together, and it's just a spectacular result. Of course, there were other elements, right? There was what was going on with MicroStrategy pushing prices higher. There was what was going on with the US election pushing prices higher. But there was just huge pent-up demand. The thing I always come back to is the vast majority of investors still have zero exposure to Bitcoin. That has to change, right? Most investors are going to end up owning Bitcoin. The ETF was the first release valve to see that happen, and that led to this spectacular result. It's starting to change in the direction of more balanced. If you look at most ETFs globally, they vary by ETF, but it's fairly typical to have about half from retail and half from institutional. And that's the direction of travel we're seeing on these Bitcoin ETFs. You're seeing the share of institutional demand tick up a little bit. We're still in the high 70s on retail, but I think that will really start to change when we get the Q4 numbers. You get those reporting about 6 weeks in arrears. So we'll get the Q4 numbers in mid-February. I think you'll start to see it more like 75-25. And then over the course of the year, that's going to balance out more towards 50-50. The important thing there is that what that tells you is we've set these records and the real institutional demand has only just started to trickle in. So it tells you that this inflow has a long way to go. I expect the $40 billion we see to be eclipsed significantly in 2025. I expect more inflows in 2025 than 2024. And it's because those institutions are really going to start to buy in mass. Long term, that's where most of the demand is going to be. If you look in the traditional sort of equity space, people don't buy one stock. They tend to buy an index fund. That's going to be true in crypto as well. There have been a couple products. Bitwise has an application, which I can't speak to specifically, but there have been a couple filings to launch these index-based ETFs. You got to remember, most traditional investors don't live in this world like I do. They think about crypto, a few minutes a week. They just want exposure. And for these people, an index-based products that'll be mostly Bitcoin, some Ethereum, and then some exposure to Solana and other altcoins will be the perfect product for them. And I think they'll attract tens of billions of dollars of inflows. One of the biggest trends last year was corporations buying Bitcoin. MicroStrategy gets all the press, but there are dozens of companies beyond MicroStrategy that are moving on to this sort of Bitcoin standard of keeping their corporate treasury in Bitcoin, both public companies and then of course private companies as well, like Bitwise. But we, think there is demand to invest in these companies that recognize that holding traditional cash on a balance sheet is a losing proposition, right? Fiat currency loses value over time. So why do America's public companies and the world's public companies hold trillions of dollars in an asset that is depreciating over time? The smarter companies are moving on to this Bitcoin standard. So without talking about, again, the specific filing, which we made and you can see at the SEC site, we think there is substantial demand to invest in these Bitcoin standard style companies. And we think it's a real differentiating factor, right? I think these are companies that get it. They see what's happened with the money printing. They see what's happening with fiat currencies worldwide. They're opting out of it onto a Bitcoin-based treasury strategy. And we think those kind of companies will be rewarded in the future.
Stablecoin's enormous potential is among Matt Hougan's most revolutionary discoveries. By making it possible for smooth, inexpensive transactions, these digital currencies are completely changing the financial industry and posing a significant threat to established systems that depend on exorbitant fees, such as credit card networks. According to Hougan, stablecoin use is going to increase, particularly in areas where currencies are erratic, providing a lifeline for financial inclusion. This change is laying the groundwork for a more contemporary and effective financial system, not merely for convenience. Stablecoins may have a market value of more than $1 trillion by the end of 2025, which would significantly change international trade and cross-border activities. This is the money of the future in action, not a passing fad. Now, let's get back into Matt Hougan's insights and learn how to navigate Bitcoin's highs and lows with a smarter strategy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for more valuable content.
I think people have underestimated the degree of this change, right? I mean, crypto has been seen in a negative light by governments for the last decade. It's been fighting uphill, and it's not just gotten to neutral, it's gotten to overtly positive. You mentioned, of course, the Trump takeover has its own crypto czar. And in Canada, as you mentioned, the leading candidate is overtly pro-Bitcoin. Canada was like the anti-Bitcoin a few years ago. You remember the trucker protests and all of that. And now to see a potential prime minister who is pro-Bitcoin, I think people have dramatically underestimated the scale of this. I would also add, there's this question of whether we'll see governments around the world starting to add Bitcoin to their own balance sheets. I would say that that possibility is not priced into the market at all, like zero. If that becomes a reality, I think you're talking about Bitcoin being many hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's just not enough Bitcoin in the world to facilitate that kind of demand without prices going substantially higher. So I think this is a real sea change. I think investors have underestimated it. I think it's going to have a long tail effect. It'll extend the bull market substantially in 2025 and potentially beyond. I'm hugely excited. Yeah, I think it's important for people to realize who aren't in the traditional equity world that voting in traditional stocks is not like voting in crypto. Voting in crypto has real community engagement. People are engaged. They think about it. Most voting in the traditional equity world uses these proxy voting providers who are institutional consultants, the most TradFi of TradFi institutions as well. So when you see a vote like that, you shouldn't interpret it as actual Microsoft's shareholders only 0.5%. It's really that the institutional capital outsources voting and these TradFi suits just reflexively vote with the company. I think eventually you're going to see a Mag 7 company own substantial amounts of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. These are tech adjacent firms. Maybe it's not Microsoft, maybe it's Meta, maybe it's another firm, but I think you're going to start to see this happen. This has gone from a sort of crazy idea that only Michael Saylor was doing to an idea that now dozens of companies are doing. I think it will be hundreds of companies, and I think they'll be buying hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin per year. It's sort of another source of insatiable demand for Bitcoin. These demand curves are exponential, which means even in the early phases when they're building, you barely notice because it's going from a few million to like maybe 5 or 6 million. You start to see it, and then it escalates like that. And that's what we're going to see on Ethereum. There are a couple reasons for that. One is that, as you know, whenever an investor comes into crypto through Bitcoin, it sort of marinates for a while, and then they start to learn more about crypto. And then 6 to 12 months later, they buy Ethereum and other altcoins. That's happened for 15 years in crypto. And of course, it's going to happen with ETFs. So you get this echo boom. But I'm also just organically excited about where Ethereum is and where it's going in 2025. I think the setup is extremely strong to benefit from agentic AI, to benefit from stablecoin demand, to benefit from tokenization. All of those play directly into Ethereum, more so than any other programmable blockchain. So I think there's both this sort of natural increase in demand for the ETF, and then these huge catalysts from what I expect to happen in 2025. So I'm really bullish on ETH inflows in 2020. They all want in on this massive, profit potential in the stablecoin space. We've mentioned before that there's some quarters where Tether makes more money than Goldman Sachs. US banks don't like that. They want to make that money for themselves. I think you'll see multiple banks launch stablecoins. I think by the end of this year, we could be paying for certain things with stablecoins on a regular basis. I think by next year, you might be paying for things on Amazon with stablecoins at a discount to their price if you use a traditional credit card. Sometimes I like to think about things in the world that don't make any sense. One thing in the world that doesn't make any sense is the take rate for credit cards on every transaction being north of 2%. And that is just so beyond absurd in today's day and age. I think that's going to be disrupted substantially. I think we could be at $1 trillion in stablecoins by the end of next year. I think people underestimate the impact of stablecoins in the US. And then when you go globally, it's that, but on steroids, right? They have, when you go outside of a country like the US with a relatively well-established financial system, you get all of those cost savings benefits, plus you get modern financial infrastructure and a currency that debases at a lower rate than local currencies. And the growth there can be exponential as well. So I really think it's one of the greatest advances in crypto. I think it's going to be massive. And I think it's going to hockey stick up almost immediately as the Trump administration takes over.
Matt Hougan's observations underscore a revolutionary change in the financial and cryptocurrency landscape, highlighting both the immediate disruption brought about by stablecoins and the long-term growth potential of Bitcoin. By contrasting the shallow voting processes in conventional stocks with the active communities in the cryptocurrency realm, Hougan demonstrates how decentralized systems are changing corporate engagement and governance. He predicts that major tech companies, potentially tech-adjacent giants like Meta, will eventually hold substantial amounts of Bitcoin on their balance sheets, creating exponential demand. Additionally, Hougan presents a positive outlook for Ethereum, predicting that by 2025 it would serve as the foundation for developments like tokenization, the uptake of stablecoins, and AI-driven innovation. According to him, the Ethereum ecosystem gains from both the influx of ETFs and its innate advantages as a programmable blockchain. Hougan sees a revolutionary change in stablecoins, where their widespread use upends credit card networks and established financial systems, particularly in nations with volatile currencies. Stablecoins are expected to have a $1 trillion market capitalization by the end of the year, putting them in a position to completely transform global financial inclusion and trade. As you reflect on these predictions, remember that the future of finance is being written in real time. If you found this video insightful, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps us grow and bring you more valuable content on the ever-evolving world of cryptocurrency and finance.